close to billions of dollars that have been brought on the backs of ethnic programs.
Thanks very much. So this next question will be directed towards Jacob.
How would you increase GPSA visibility and outreach among GPSA members?
Does anyone need that question repeated?
One more time.
How would you increase GPSA visibility and outreach amongst GPSA members?
That's a good question. I always grew up hearing the saying from my parents, how does it go? If Caesar won't go to Rome, Rome has to come to Caesar. And I've always taken it to mean that at the end of the day, it's our job in leadership and as an organization to really convince people that this organization matters for them and to them and works in their best interest. And I think at a 10,000-foot level, that's the way that you engage people in a cause. You engage them by demonstrating to them, why these discussions about being on regents' budget committees, why these discussions about the Office of Equity and Inclusion, how all of these debates that we have internally and with the regents actually impact them in their daily lives on this campus. Because I think, as Katie said, this university is unique in the things that detract people's attention away from campus life. This university is unique in that many of us work full-time jobs. Many of us have dependents. And so to communicate that vision with the GPSA membership is the number one thing that I would try to do. How to go about doing that? Well, I think it can be creative, and I don't think that that's the substance of the question. I mean, there's always the Lobo, there's always the media, there's always holding town halls and trying to have as open a debate as possible that is as accessible as possible. I think that webcasting of GPSA meetings and all GPSA committee hearings at any meeting that a GPSA representative is at is a great thing to do and is something that should happen. And that would include the budget summit and any open meetings with the Board of Regents at which we're available. Because at the end of the day, this university falls under the Open Meetings Act. And I know that there was some debate about that recently, but I think that that's an important step forward that we can have. And that's how I'll try and answer this question for all of you, is for me, how we go about doing it, we can figure that out. But I think having the important discussion about what we want to be for graduate students is a number one priority for me. And how we want to collaborate with organizations outside of this university to really take the lead, once and for all, on many of these challenges that face not only the University of New Mexico and all of us here, but face every graduate student and every undergraduate student in the state of New Mexico. If we don't take the lead on addressing the tuition policy, this university will continue to place a greater burden on graduate and undergraduate students. That's just a fact, and that's been the national trend. If we don't act and engage people in a serious discussion on this issue, if we don't act and take the lead on reforming how this state supports or does not support research funding for its graduate students, New Mexico will never take its rightful place in this country. Other states like Minnesota have been visionaries in how they fund and support research. There are models out there that we need to engage stakeholders from across the state to talk about and to finally take the lead on fixing on a systemic level. And so if I'm elected, and if I'm lucky enough to receive your votes and the votes of whoever's watching, I'll be the first one out there, day after day, talking with people. I'm not shy, and I like talking a lot. And I'll be out there making this case to whomever I can and whenever I can. And that's how I'll approach it. Convincing people that now is the time to take action. Now is the time to really get at the heart of the issues that continue to challenge us year after year after year.
I think this question focuses at a really key point, and it's something that I think is really important. And I've always lived by the idea that it's amazing how much work you can get done when no one wants to take credit for it. And I think that that's what this question revolves around. And I think it doesn't necessarily involve just the president. I think this starts with the council. I think the GPSA Council is the heart of the GPSA organization, but it hasn't been for years. And I think that it's necessary for the council to work with the president, and the president to encourage the council to work for the organization as a whole, because for so long it's revolved around the executive. And I think that it's really important that we shift that balance and create an organization as a whole that works together. And the reason for that is because of, like I said earlier when I first started, was that the representatives of the council encompass the entire university. As much as the president wants to try, that they may not be able to do that. And as far as being an advocate for that, I've been working on that since I joined council last year, and the Constitution, the new Constitution promotes that, and some of my ideas I've been advocating for with the stronger council in that. This is a cyclical process. I think involvement, a stronger council creates and a more involved council with more representation creates a better executive that's more representative of the student body as well. And I think you do have to look at the organization as a whole, because they feed off of each other. So it's important for that balance to be struck. As far as a plan in the executive, there's probably 3 main points that I would focus on working with outreach. And I think that it's also not one person. I don't think this is a job that the president can handle by himself. First off, it would be creating connections with more students around the university to create a stronger student voice. And that would be specifically working with the undergraduates. There's been a disconnect as long as I've been in the university, and that's almost 10 years ago, it seems like now, when my first experience with the interaction between ASHN and the GPSA. With that connection, with a stronger voice, I believe that the student governments can work collectively with the Daily Lobo to create more information that's